Hello fam, welcome back to the African Diaspora News Channel. I'm Wongel Zelalem and today we're talking about racism, particularly racism in China versus racism in the United States of America. We all can agree that racism is wrong. Racism against a group of people just because they're different, just because of the color of their skin is wrong, is evil, is bad. But some black people, actually a lot of black people, say that the racism they face in China is better than the racism they face in the US. They actually prefer the Chinese racism. This is why we'll come back and discuss.
Actually, a lot of black people you'll talk to say they prefer the racism in China over back in the States. They perceive it to be differently because here they see it more as ignorance, whereas in the States it's more like hate. Like people actually hate you and like want to kill you or threaten you violently. But in China, it's more like, it's just different. It doesn't seem like they hate you. Especially when I speak Chinese, I can go almost anywhere and talk to people, at least in the places I've been so far. And people will kind of accept me, I guess. I don't know how else to explain that, but they won't be like, oh, get out of my store. They won't follow me around in the store and see if I'm trying to steal something.
As you heard the young lady explain, a lot of the people that travel to China and that travel to the US have similar things to say about the racism they face by the people, that is, the Asians versus the white people. They seem to have the same conclusion at the end of that experience, right? And that is the Chinese, at least, is coming from ignorance. The US, it's hatred. That's how they differentiate it, or at least that's how their experience has been. And this is not the first time that I'm hearing this. Even though racism is wrong, whether you look at it from this perspective, that perspective, there's no justification, right? But it's quite compelling. We want to understand why exactly do you think that way? And as they seem to agree that the Chinese feels more of ignorance, not knowing really and trying to understand, but the US is just hatred and they want to unalive you and they don't want to see you and they don't want to interact with you. And this is a conversation that we've covered. For me personally, I find it very hard to understand the ignorance part of the conversation. Yes, there was a time where I genuinely believed maybe it's coming from ignorance because of the videos that I watched. You'll see the interaction black people are having in China, right? And it seems very innocent, especially the older generation. The Chinese will come and say, oh my God, can I touch your skin? Let me see, does it come off? They'll ask to take pictures. They'll have a conversation with that person, ask them questions like when you wash, when you shower, does it change? I've heard it all. But the more I consume these videos, the more I hear the stories coming out of China, I'm wondering, this is 2025. How are you, a person that is existing in this world with social media, whether you know the Chinese are not on, let's say, our social media of Google, YouTube, whatever it may be, they have their own social media, they have their own access to the world, and they have their own information and education system, which by the way, they tell us is the best in the world, right? So when I hear a Chinese man approaching a black young man and asking him, do you bleed red? It makes me wonder, what do you mean by do you bleed red? Even animals bleed red. Are you insinuating, you don't think we're human beings? It's mind-boggling in my opinion. And that's not the only scenario. We've heard so many stories and interactions I have watched where they ask a question and when the person that was asked returns the question by a question or is pushing back, it's like, I was just kidding. I was just trying to make fun of the situation. So I'm like, so you really did know. You were just being silly. You were just trying to put this young man or young woman down when you were asking those silly questions. So that's why I'm not very convinced with ignorance. Of course, there are some people that are ignorant or that have never met a black person. So they're interested and they want to learn and they want to ask questions. But I feel like you can gauge those. It's pretty different from someone coming and asking you questions like, do you bleed red? Or when you wash your face, does it even change? The questions our people face is insane. But at the end of the day, this is their experience. As I said, a lot of black people say that. I prefer the Chinese over the US or Europe because at the very least, they are asking questions. They're being inviting. They're not malicious, or I don't see them trying to unalive me or attack me. But anyways, fam, if you have experienced both countries, both people, what was it like for you? And do you agree with this concept? I am